First, let me say what a pleasure it is to be here. And I'd like to thank you for the kind introduction, John, and all the others at the Economist who helped organize this delightful event, including Nektaria Basaribakis, who's the president and CEO of the Economist for Greece, Cyprus, Malta, and Southeast Europe, and whom I had the pleasure of meeting at a similar conference in Athens earlier this year, and John Yorgoulas, who is the general manager of the Economist here in Cyprus. I'd also like to recognize the presence of our fine United States ambassador to Cyprus, Ambassador Kathleen Doherty. It is career diplomats like Kathleen Doherty that make Americans so proud of our professional foreign service. It's my great pleasure to be at this 13th Cyprus Summit with so many distinguished attendees representing various states and sectors. The Economist continues to be a leader in providing well-informed, insightful analysis at a time when it is really more necessary than ever. And again, I thank its leaders for organizing such an important summit at a crucial time for Cyprus and for the region, for the European Union, and for the world. As a Greek American, whose roots go back to both Chios and Sparta, I am especially pleased that you have invited me to be with you this evening. When I began my diplomatic career in 1960, Cyprus was an entirely different place. The island had a population of little more than 500,000 people, and the GDP per capita numbered in the hundreds of dollars, with a simple agrarian economy. It had just gained its independence and was facing an uncertain future. When I look around today, I see a modernized economy, a financial hub, a potential energy hub, and of course, an absolutely wonderful destination for tourists. And crucially, an important member of the European Union, a community of over 500 million people. True, there have been challenges, some serious setbacks, which you know much better than I, but challenges can create opportunities. The significant progress Cyprus has made in many areas is proof of this. The business and investment climate has improved greatly since the recent financial crisis, and Cyprus has experienced solid economic recovery, driven largely by tourism and domestic demand. The tourism sector had a record-breaking year in 2016 with 3.2 million arrivals, partially boosted by the introduction of new airline carriers to the market, leading to an increase in capacity and accessibility, demonstrating the utility of an open skies policy. In March of this year, Cyprus exited a 3-year EU IMF bailout program. After 3 years of recession, real GDP resumed the return to growth in the year 2015. Projections call for continued GDP growth in the coming years. And given the discussions in the United States about health care, I was interested to see that this summer the Parliament introduced a national health care system, which is expected to be fully operational by the summer of 2020. And today, Cypriots are among the most prosperous people in the region. Joining the European Union in 2004 was a major milestone, ensuring the island's Western orientation and further integration with member states. It also enhanced Cyprus's strategic importance with relation to the non-EU members, positioning it as an important partner for both Europe and the Middle East and North Africa region. The agenda for this summit outlines opportunities in finance, energy and investment, as well as reunification. In the first of these three, Cyprus is clearly moving forward, as evidenced by what I have mentioned here earlier in my remarks. The wheels of recovery have been set in motion and are turning at a constant pace. But the final capstone in recovery is having a reunified Cyprus. Cyprus has already built strong relations in this region, but when reunification eventually does take place, it will represent a new milestone in the history of this country, and I'm sure contribute to the stability and prosperity of this part of the world. Trilateral cooperation between Cyprus, Greece, and Israel continues to gain momentum, with President Anastasiadis, Prime Minister Tsipras, and Prime Minister Netanyahu reaffirming their commitment to collaborating on energy, economy, telecommunications, and other areas at the third Trilateral Summit in June. The three governments strongly support the Eastern Mediterranean pipeline project as an alternative gas corridor for Europe. Additionally, they are pressing on with the Euro-Asia interconnector, which would connect the electricity grids of Israel, Cyprus, and Greece through Crete with mainland Europe, thus ending the electricity isolation of the island. These two projects are of strategic importance and promise to not only deliver economic and political benefits to Cyprus, Greece, and Israel, but also to enhance Europe's energy security. The three countries also cooperate on various other major issues such as research and development, defense and security, emergency and rescue operations, and health and medical science. It goes without saying that Cyprus has close ties at every level with Greece, but it also maintains closer ties than most European Union countries to Egypt. Leaders from Cyprus, Greece, and Egypt have held 4 summits so far discussing issues like the possibility of bringing Egyptian and Cypriot natural gas to Europe via Greece. President Anastasiadis held a 3-day visit to Lebanon over the summer to promote Cyprus-Lebanon ties. And relations with Jordan are close as well, including the signing of a memorandum of understanding on defense and military cooperation early in 2017. So what of the United States? What can Cyprus expect from Washington, especially in this time of political and administrative transition in Washington? Support for the Cypriot-led United Nations facilitated reunification negotiations has been a consistent pillar of United States-Cyprus policy for over 40 years. The United States has played a crucial role in facilitating communication between the sides throughout the negotiations, and American officials maintain a strong working relationship with both leaders as well as with the United Nations Good Office's mission. It is well known that the sides have made significant progress over the past few years, though key differences still remain. While the United States continues to support reunification efforts, it has focused on expanding bilateral cooperation with the Republic of Cyprus across areas of mutual interest without compromising the honest broker role in the talks. As you know, Vice President Pence met with President Anastasiadis in Washington in June, when the leaders had a good meeting in which they reaffirmed the strong partnership between the two countries and discussed areas for further cooperation. The United States has worked closely with the Cypriot government through bilateral anti-terrorism assistance, regional security initiative, and export and border security programs to strengthen Cypriot capacity to combat terrorism and money laundering. The island is an attractive business destination for United States investors, and the United States supports Cyprus' right to explore and develop its offshore energy resources with the expectation that any potential revenues be shared equitably among Cypriots in the context of an overall settlement. As I said earlier in my remarks, this is a period of political transition in the United States. Our presidential campaign in 2016 was very bitterly contested, and our new president campaigned on a very populist platform. He questioned our alliances. He spoke out against free trade and immigration, and he generally gave the impression that he intended to take the United States foreign policy in a more nationalistic and even isolationist direction. Indeed, on the very first day he took office, Mr. Trump announced the United States' withdrawal from the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership, the TPP, an initiative linking the United States with 11 other Pacific free market economies, whose negotiation had consumed the efforts of the Obama administration in its final 2 years. But there are also many promises and threats the President made when he was a candidate that he has not carried out. And as time goes on, a greater sense of normalcy settles over our foreign and national security policy. We have not, for example, declared China a currency manipulator, as candidate Trump said he would, thereby avoiding a crisis in bilateral relations with China at a time when its cooperation is so much needed in dealing with the tense situation on the Korean Peninsula. We have also reaffirmed our strong commitment to NATO security, especially the principle under Article 5 of the NATO Treaty, which stipulates that an attack on one is an attack on all. You will recall that in the campaign, and even in the early days after taking office, Mr. Trump put this bedrock commitment in doubt by making it contingent upon the adequacy of member states' contribution to their own defense. To be sure, there still are uncertainties about the Trump administration's foreign policy. Perhaps one of the most important is in our own Western Hemisphere, where despite intense ongoing negotiating efforts, the fate of the North American Free Trade Agreement, the NAFTA, remains in doubt. This 25-year-old economic agreement between Canada, Mexico, and the United States has more than quadrupled the level of trade between our countries and has been a powerful engine for economic growth. Though talks continue, and I am hopeful that we will be able to achieve a revised North American Free Trade Agreement that the three parties can live with, the negotiating atmosphere has been difficult and at times very discouraging. We must remember that opposition to NAFTA was a significant part of Mr. Trump's campaign platform, and though our economic interests clearly favor confirmation of this historic agreement, the sentiments of Mr. Trump's political base are clearly in the contrary direction. These things said, I believe that overall we will see more continuity than disruption in United States foreign policy in the years going forward. We will continue our strong partnership with the democracies of Europe in both the economic and security fields, including, of course, with Cyprus. And we retain a strong interest in the stability and prosperity of the Eastern Mediterranean, of which Cyprus is such an important part. Our relationship with Israel remains rock solid. We support the stability of Egypt, and of course we are doing what we can to help defeat ISIS and other extremist elements in Iraq, Syria, and elsewhere. In effect, Cyprus is Europe's easternmost country, so it has a foot in both Europe and the Eastern Mediterranean. Cyprus is playing and can continue to play an important role in both of these regions. And in doing that, I believe that Cyprus can be confident that it has a strong partner in the United States. Thank you very much.
And as I said, the ambassador might take one or two questions if anybody would like to put their hand up and ask one. I tell you what I would like to ask, Ambassador, because as you said, the President has not been quite as bad as some people feared when he was a candidate, but he has pulled out of the Paris Climate Change Treaty. Do you see, which has caused a great deal of concern in Europe and indeed China and around the world, is there any chance of that, of America coming back into the Paris climate change arrangement?
Well, I suppose certainly the possibility must exist. It's conceivable. Let me just say, backing up a minute, it's difficult to have been a government official for 44 years and see some of the subjects which you hold the most dear coming under such threat. I happen to have been the ambassador to Mexico during the time we both conceived and negotiated the North American Free Trade Agreement. And then I ran the bureau in the Department of State. And I was the Assistant Secretary of State for Oceans and International Environmental and Scientific Affairs when we negotiated the Montreal Protocol to protect the stratospheric ozone layer, which was the first significant greenhouse gas agreement that the world achieved in terms of limiting these emissions into the atmosphere. So to see that kind of work coming under threat, as seems to have been happening, makes you sort of look at your whole life's work and wonder if, what is going to be left of the things one worked on so hard. That having been said, I'm not so sure that our withdrawal from the Paris Accords necessarily means we're going to be reversing a lot of environmental policies in the United States. And maybe over a period of time, the administration will think better of what it has done. I've got to express my strongest admiration for what the previous administration did in achieving Paris and the efforts, particularly of Secretary of State John Kerry, to achieve, and working with others around the world to achieve that agreement. A lot of what the President seems to have done in this area strikes me as having been an effort to protect the coal industry in the United States, which was an important constituency of his, coal miners and so forth in those kinds of states. But I'm not sure the coal industry is going to survive anyway for that long, given the fact that more competitive and economic forms of creating energy are in prospect or already even exist. So it may be that some of the things that he thinks he's protecting his constituents from will no longer seem as quite as much of a threat to him a few years down the road. Plus, I'm sure there is division within his administration about what to do about the atmosphere. I can't believe that everybody in his entourage was absolutely unanimous about the desirability of withdrawing from the Paris Agreement.
Anybody else want more?
Well, I don't want to stand.
No, I guess they're anxious to have their dinner, so...
You and dinner. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anthony.